So welcome to another Impact Sessions podcast with me, Nick Bramley. As always, I've got a fantastic guest for us to interview and explore. And today we're going to see a different aspect to the podcast, and the fact that we are, for those who watch it on YouTube, recording the podcast in one of my client studios, and that client is also the guest for today. I'm delighted to introduce you to Larner Caleb. He's the Creative Marketing Director at Dynamic Business Services. And I've worked with Dynamic for a number of years. I've worked with Larner for the last 12 months or so. And today we're going to explore rebranding a mature and successful business. Why would you do it and how does it work? So without further ado, Larner, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, mate. Nice to see you again.
And indeed, and a nice studio setting for us as well.
Yeah, lovely. And thanks for inviting me to talk about a subject that I'm very passionate about.
No problem. Well, I've been involved on the sort of peripheral of watching it evolve over the last 12 months. Yeah. And, you know, it's a very interesting process from the starting point of deciding to do something right through to getting there. So you've been the creative director at Dynamic for just over that year that we mentioned. But before that, you worked for an agency providing services to Dynamic. Before we get into the whole sort of rebranding issue, do you want to explain to us a little bit about kind of Dynamic themselves and then how the transition went from agency into employed sort of role?
Yeah. Well, as you know, we were a supplier to Dynamic as an agency, supplying a little bit of creative marketing and predominantly SEO kind of work. Mm-hmm. And before that, I'd known Steve a little bit before that, and that's how we kind of got talking about working together. I'd say agency life is very much a people business, as is the e-learning business. Mm-hmm. And I kind of got a great feeling from working with the contacts here at Dynamic, and then I kind of got invited to a few sort of out of work social events, and then as well as a really good feeling for some of the contacts I had, I got a good feeling for the culture as well. And I just thought, yeah, that's a place I'd really love to work, you know.
Excellent.
And I think I got talking to Steve, and because you get working with a client, you get embroiled in their brand as well. And I was really honest with Steve and the rest of the guys who we were speaking to. And what I could see was an amazing product, you know, fantastic service, and really, really talented people. And for me, looking at the brand, I didn't think the brand sat in the same space as that feeling for the work. Mm. And I just thought, you know, there's an opportunity there.
Well, you mentioned talented people, and the reality is Dynamic have invested heavily over many years. We'll talk about their celebratory year last year, but over many years they've invested in the best of the talent they can get from the university pool, haven't they? And every year, you know, making job opportunities available to graduates who are coming through with the latest and greatest ideas in digital learning and e-learning techniques and things. So you're right, the product and the service and the delivery have been at the forefront of the success of the business over the years.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
When you came in, you've got a business that's mature, a business that's successful, and it was 25 years last year in October that Dynamic had been in existence, which is a really good celebratory.
Great achievement,
yeah. Yeah, great achievement. But the if it ain't broke, don't fix it envelope. You know, why was the rebrand a big priority for you when you started?
Okay, well, that's a great question. It's not so much a fix, and certainly as I kind of alluded to in the previous question, it wasn't so much a case of fixing the product and fixing the service, certainly not fixing the people that were here. It wasn't a case of that. It was more a case of aligning what people saw as the brand with the work that was coming out of Dynamic. And I think it's as simple as that, really. And there was a bit of a misaligned for me. And I think when I eventually got here, I found that a lot of people felt the same way, certainly during the workshops that we held. And it was more a case of changing the brand, or evolving the brand to try and sort of create that perception of where I thought we were. Mm. And when I got speaking to Steve, I came out with it, and this is in a coffee shop, because I already had an idea of what the brand should look like in my head, even when I was working at Creod and we weren't necessarily working on the website. I had an idea in my head of what the website should look like and what it should say. And I mentioned the words world class to Steve in all seriousness. And, you know, I really believed them. And I think part of my job coming in was helping other people within the company to believe that and believe that that's what they produce.
Well, they certainly do produce world-class digital and e-learning solutions, but I agree with you. I've worked with Dynamic for a number of years, and I don't think anyone ever had the, if you like, the confidence maybe to describe themselves as world-class, yet the output is world-class, the staff are world-class, the solutions are world-class.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it takes an external person looking in from the outside to say that to a company. You know, I kind of remember when I was at my previous agency, we were rubbish at sort of talking about ourselves, you know, and I'll be perfectly honest, you know, in hindsight, I think we produced some really, really good work, but we were so embroiled in the work that we did, and B, we just didn't have that confidence because nobody was telling us, the work that you do is really good.
Yeah, I think from a Dynamic point of view, there's always been this confidence of winning work, delivering work, getting great feedback. But I think there's an expectation that, well, that's just what we do, isn't it? And it's having that confidence, isn't it, really? So
it is, yeah.
So when you started talking to people internally, what was the reaction? You mentioned that, you know, a lot of people didn't feel that the brand at that point reflected things. What was were you pushing against an open door when you started exploring it a bit further?
To a certain extent. I mean, you might talk about a total rebrand and, you know, that it's a radical change. I didn't really see it as a radical change. Yes, it looks completely different, you know, from what it looked previously. But it's still the same dynamic, you know, and for me, it was a case of pulling on a few levers, pushing a few buttons, almost like, to use a bit of a crap analogy, I guess, rearranging a room, you know, and the stuff that's in it. It's still the same room. So, you might want to tone down, say, a certain visual device that nobody can rationalise why we're using it, tone that down. But then you might want to turn up the volume on, say, amazing testimonials from clients. I kind of liken it to these various levers that you can pull on within brand elements. It's a little bit like you look at the Jaguar rebrand recently.
Yeah.
And you know, everybody's completely lost their minds on it on LinkedIn about it, you know, and I think they made the mistake of coming out with that little video to start with, and you didn't see much else behind it.
Yeah.
But, you know, I bet my bottom dollar that they'll still be producing the same quality cars in a year's time. The people who are making those cars will still be approaching the work in the same way. I might have got that horribly wrong, but that's my impression. And I think the people who are commenting on the brand and talking about, they've completely done away with all the heritage. Well, if you're talking about brand elements, they maybe could have pulled that out a bit more.
Yeah.
They've chosen not to, so I think the jury's out on that. So it was more a case, bringing it back to Dynamic, of pulling on certain levers and thinking, right, what are our strongest points?
Some of which, by the way, I would say, Larner, are probably hidden under a bushel a little bit. You know,
and I think a lot of companies do that, Nick.
Yeah.
You know, like I just said about a previous agency, I think we hid our light under a bushel to a certain extent. And, you know, again, it takes that kind of external influence. So, like I say, when I got talking to Steve, before I even got here, I was external.
Yeah.
And then I kind of treated myself as external for at least the first 6 months when I got here as well, because I think you have to put yourself in those shoes.
Well, the beauty of that is you haven't got the political skin in the game, have you? You want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And you want to do the best thing, and you bring in your expertise to the table.
Yeah.
So from start to finish, and let's explore last year, 2024, Dynamic turned 25 at the end of October. Was that always, once you got the green light to say, let's do this, was that always your deadline?
That's a great question. No, it wasn't. My deadline was 30 days before that, on the 25th of September. The reason being for that was, as creative marketing director, I wanted to have 2 bites of the cherry. So I wanted to make a big deal about the rebrand and, you know, announce all that, and then have, you know, 4 weeks later, the 25th anniversary. Now, things being things, and, you know, all things being equal, rebrands and brands from scratch, they don't always go according to plan. And if I'm being perfectly honest, we missed my initial arbitrary deadline by 4 weeks, but the 25th was absolutely set in stone.
That was the line in the sand, wasn't it?
That was the line. That was the red line, if you like. Yeah. We had to meet that.
So what you ended up wrapping together was a rebrand to celebrate the 25th year.
Yeah, and with the amazing party that Steve and Lisa threw at Headingley, it kind of worked. It worked really well in the end, you know. So you know, we all survived. Nobody died.
Well, you have a wow factor as well, don't you, when you have something like that as a celebratory event. So let's just talk about the daunting level of challenge, because for those who are listening, you might be thinking rebrand just means change your logo and change your website. There's so much more to it. When you start something as big as this, as all-encompassing as this, with a business as mature as this, what are the fear factors and what are the kind of the gulp moments you're thinking, got to get that right, and that's going to take a lot longer than we thought? What was that like?
Well, that's interesting. That word daunting that you've just used, I don't see it as daunting. I just saw it as super exciting. Now, you don't get me wrong, I had a few sleepless nights along the way, as did a few other people probably. People who are responsible for certain areas of it, because it's kind of all encompassing. But in terms of the scariest bits, I guess for me personally, and being truthfully honest about it all, are people who come up to you and tell you things need to be done that you don't fully understand. So there might be technical things, say for instance, I don't know, web developers say we need X amount of time for this, this and this, or we've not accounted for this. And if I'm being totally honest, there were certain things that I didn't fully account for. Initially.
And those are spanners in the works that you don't see because you didn't know how big the spanner would be.
And the spanners in the works that probably every branding project experiences. What I would say about that is the good thing is that the team here are just exceptional. I'm not just saying that because I am here. I mean, I was saying that before I even came here, but everybody pulls together.
Well, let's explore that. So Dynamic, for those who don't know, are a cutting edge, really, leading edge digital learning and e-learning provider. So video, 360 video, VR, creative content, that's really up their street. So how much of a team effort was it to go from maybe, when you started in early January to that 25th of October deadline? How much of a team effort was it to get things done and to get things right?
Oh, blimey, it was more of a team effort that I can't even encompass in words, to be honest, Nick. You start off doing workshops and everybody was invited to workshops.
Let's just explore that.
Go on.
What's a workshop when you're talking about?
So, well, a workshop can take any forms, but what I wanted to gather was what people's opinion of the company were, what people's opinion of the way we operated were, people's opinion of the brand itself, what the hopes and ambitions are for the brand, what they disliked about the old brand, what they liked about the old brand, unique selling points that we can bring to the fore. So it was a massive information gathering exercise.
But there's 50 people plus at Dynamic. Were you ever confident you'd get some level of coherent agreement from that many voices? That must be quite a hard thing to have collated all that information in the first instance.
That's the thing, you don't always get agreement on everything, and you're never going to do. The thing about going back to the whole team question, and it was a massive team effort. The first point being getting everybody involved, getting all those opinions. As you can imagine, with 50 odd people, there's loads of opinions. It's all post-it notes. That's a post-it note exercise. So that's the whole company involved. Then there's a little bit of going away and working in isolation and distilling all that information. Then there's an aspect of taking it to a smaller group, a bit of a steering committee, if you like, and sort of coming up with one or two routes. And then when you're getting towards the sharp end and it all hits the fan, everybody bails in, and thankfully the team here at Dynamic have been amazing to sort of all pull in the same direction.
I mean, it's a hell of a project management thing, isn't it? It's not just about getting the brand done, it's about pulling all those strings at the same time, at the right time, to hit that non-negotiable deadline, I guess.
That's right, and I guess there are lots of people here at Dynamic who don't wait to be asked to do things.
Yeah.
They proactively think, right, that needs doing then, that needs doing then.
Yeah.
And that was an absolutely massive help.
Okay. Let me explore the bit I absolutely love. And don't get me wrong, when it comes to look and feel and style and colours and content, love all of that. I think it looks fresh, it looks really on point. I think it's very modern, and that's the outward facing bit. But digging a bit deeper, digging a bit deeper, Larner, I think you've built the brand around 3 cornerstones, and that's the bit that not only fascinates me but really excites me. You've got innovation, inspiration, and integrity at the heart of the brand, right? So what's the story around that? Why and how do you do that, and what's the value of building it around 3 things like that?
Right, okay, so going back to the workshops, a lot of the feedback from the workshops was that many people thought the brand was, or certain aspects of the brand were overcomplicated, or were saying too much. So the first thought was, right, it's got to be about simplicity. And I wanted to simplify everything down, not just from a visual aspect, but from a values aspect. For example, at the time we had 12 values. I'm not sure I can remember them all, but I mean, that's the point.
Yeah.
You know, any company with 12 values are not going to get everybody to remember every one of those values.
The other thing I'd say to you, they're not really values, they're now the words on a page at that point, because there's so many of them. You could probably hold up a mirror and say, we do reflect these 12 values, but if you can't recite them, you don't know what they are, you can't live by them. It's just accidental.
That's the essential point of a brand. It's not just a look and feel and a colour palette. It's how people go about the daily lives at work and how they operate with clients and with each other, which is where your values come in. So the reason why we chose 3 values is well, there's 2 reasons really. One's scientific and there's good hard reasoning behind it, and the other one was a little bit arbitrary, which I'll come on to in a minute. But the scientific aspect of it is that basically not everybody's going to remember 3 values. So if you have say 12 values, you might get a few people remembering 2. You might get another few people remembering a different 2, and at best you might get somebody remembering 3, 4, or even 5. I couldn't even hope to remember that many. But you know, the upshot of that is that people are going to be pulling in slightly different directions, which is not what you want really. That's not the whole idea of. You
don't have consistency of the brand then, do you?
Exactly, yeah. And then getting onto the arbitrary bit, and there's always room for a bit of arbitrary thinking in branding. We chose 3 because, and this comes out on the insights piece on the website. So Dynamic D, the capital D, it's got 3 sides. And then we got into this whole sort of triangle chat. There was a lot of chat about triangles. There was a play button there that we could see that could be used as a device. And also the whole idea about moving people forward and helping companies progress through whatever kind of learning. It was kind of an arrow. So we had this triangle arrow thing going on. And I just wanted to keep everything super, super simple. So we just chose 3 values. And not only that, the upshot of that is you'd hope 3 people would remember three values rather than 12.
Well, more importantly than that as well, that links to it, is when you split the D down, you see the video where the D breaks into its component 3 parts.
Yeah.
The letter I is very clearly obvious in that as well. And the
was,
alliteration of innovation, inspiration, integrity are much more memorable than 3 random or more random kind of choice of language, isn't it really? So
and that was a fantastic job done by the design team to pull that level of thinking together. But going back to those 12 values, we haven't done away with them. So there's quite a lot of legacy from the existing brand, because it wasn't a case of coming in and saying, you know, this brand's completely not working. So we took a lot of those 12 values and thought, right, which words would encompass a lot of them. So for instance, I can remember some of them now. So originally, as part of those 12, we had curiosity and creativity. Well, that comes under innovation.
Yeah.
There was open and honest.
Yeah.
And that comes under integrity. So, you know, you've already distilled quite a lot of your values down to one or 2 anyway.
But you're not changing the DNA of the business at all. You're
Absolutely
just clarifying it, aren't you?
Yeah, you're not changing the DNA by any means, because as you quite rightly pointed out, 25 years of being in business, doing something right.
Yeah.
So you don't want to change that, which kind of, a lot of people have talked about the Jaguar brand. Well, why are we doing away with all this heritage? That is something that I certainly didn't want to do at all, because that's worth its weight in gold.
And I guess that's where creativity comes in. Whoever the agency was behind Jaguar will have taken a brief and decided that that's their approach, and then Jaguar signed off. And each business is different, but I think
absolutely,
what you've tried to do and what you've achieved very well is you've balanced the 25 years of success and all of the capability into the entire brand sort of rethink, and it's gone really well. So starting in October when it was launched, we had for those who are listening or watching, we had a hell of a party, I think we'd call it, wouldn't we, to launch that at Headingley Stadium in Leeds. And the brand was launched. It went around the stadium. There was the colour schemes were all fantastic. We had various people there, from clients and guests and staff and partners and things. But we're now settled into 2025, so that's kind of a couple of months behind.
Yeah.
What's your hopes for the brand in 2025, Larner? What you're trying to sort of hope and achieve for it?
Well, I think the initial hope for the brand is a commercial return, because that's the reason why we rebranded in the first place. It's for commercial objectives.
It's not a vanity exercise, is it?
It's absolutely not a vanity exercise, because if it is, then you need to go back to the drawing board and ask yourself why you're doing it in the first place.
Yeah.
In the longer term, I hope the brand has some longevity, but I do hope that people within the company take ownership of it, and we evolve it as the market sees fit. For me,
I like the longevity bit, because I'm assuming you don't want to go through that again very soon, do you?
Not for a couple of months at least.
That's all right. Well, when you look at it, I would say that because of the clarity and because of how the content and how the kind of collateral that's been produced in the new format is available, how do you think that the business is embracing it, like the sales team, and using it to its advantage? Because it is now everything that we talk about and do should follow that brand kind of pattern, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I think we've had some great feedback so far, but I think you generally would within your own people.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of the sales guys, I hope they find that visually it adds to the credibility of the business. I hope they find the messaging clearer. I'm very keen to work very closely with the sales guys, and any collateral they want or they feel they need, then we can work with them within the brand. So I think we'll have to wait and see there. And like I say, we just work very closely with the sales team.
Well, I'll give you a bit of feedback on two things of that nature. We're in early January 2025, and already since coming back from Christmas, we've had 4 significant pieces of inbound work enquiries that are decent, significant, and exciting for Dynamic. And the feedback from all 4 is, we love what we've seen, and we had no hesitation in reaching out to you. So there's 4 pieces that you can bring back to say,
yeah,
would the old brand have achieved that? We don't know, but the new brand certainly has done that.
Yeah. That was going to be my next point on the question you asked. How's it gone down within the company? That's fine, and I don't think you necessarily create a brand to please everybody all the time, or else you're probably creating the wrong brand.
Yeah.
I think the best brands have a little bit of friction there, where some people love them and some people maybe not so much.
Yeah.
I think the most important feedback is from your potential clients, rather than the people within the company. And that's not to sound disingenuous. That's what you do a rebrand for.
Well, there's your commercial value right there, isn't it, really? And the other thing, going back to the collateral, one of the reasons I was really keen to interview you, not just because you and I have worked together for the last 12 months, I've worked with Dynamic for a long time, is you've written an insights piece that's on the website, at Dynamic's website. And that was the fascinating insight into how and why, and I wanted to explore that in a podcast version. So there's a lot of thought got into it, and it is external, it is internal, but it's also all encompassing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think going, not to harp on about Jaguar again, but I think some brands make the mistake of launching with even just a logo, and they completely give the wrong impression.
Yeah.
And as we all know, a brand is not just a logo. It's how people operate within the business, how we treat our clients, how we go about our work, and how we deliver the service. So I wanted to sort of quickly explain the thinking behind the brand and why we've done what we've done, not just for people within the business, but for people who might be interested to read that story. And also another aspect to it was just a point of courtesy for clients, because if they see a change, right, well, they want to know what's going on, so they can go on there and read. And it was literally just a point of courtesy to let clients know where we are, what we're thinking, and what our hopes for the future are, and what our hopes for the future for clients are as well.
Well, I'll put a link to the insights piece in the show notes. So when we publish the podcast, everybody can see that, link it through. And for anyone who's interested in branding, rebranding, whatever, it's an exceptional read. It's not an exceptionally long read. It's just a really good, high quality piece of content. So what advice would you give anyone in a business, whether it's mature or not, who might be considering a rebrand or even a brand refresh? What's your first go-to piece of thou must do?
Right, okay. Well, pretty short and sweet, really. Think of the why. So why are you rebranding? And if you ever think about that, and if you're not rebranding for commercial reasons, then you need to go back and look at some other aspects of your business. Simple as that.
Okay, great answer. Biggest learning curve for you in terms of the learning point from the whole process? It took a good solid 10 months, team effort, all that. What's your biggest learning point you've taken from that for you personally and for the business, do you think, Larner?
Well, I've learned a lot about a lot of people within the business, because it's pulled on a lot of levers within the business. So I've learned so much about everybody's skill sets, everybody's approach to work. And I can only say that's been more than positive. And then secondly, my dislike and hatred of spreadsheets has not changed in any way, shape or form.
Well, if you're going to project manage something, I can almost guarantee there's a spreadsheet somewhere in the mix, isn't there, really?
Well, yeah.
You're not a spreadsheet guy, you're a creative guy, aren't you?
Yeah, more creative than more project manager, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, but that's okay, that's all right. So in terms of where the brand sits now, you've left the sort of development behind up to October the 25th last year. Is it still a living, breathing entity? Is it still, there's more to come? Does it keep evolving? What's the thought process around that?
The brand itself, I would say, let's let it live for 12 months. See where we are in terms of, and I don't want to conflate brand and website, but the website is obviously the shop window for the brand and our services and products. The website is a living, breathing thing for certain, and there are other aspects to add to the website. We talked about innovation, inspiration, and integrity. Well, innovation is going to take a major part in the website moving forward. We're going to have a whole section on that, and then we've got a whole sector section to put on the website, and then just try and get as many people involved in providing content for that website, so we can just get bigger and better. And then obviously SEO is a never-ending job, so there's all that to work on as well.
So let's take the SEO point then. As you were developing the brand and the content in particular, you're doing it from an SEO perspective. Do you have to keep revisiting, refreshing that because SEO changes, the algorithms change, the ball game change, the black arts change?
I don't know. A lot of people call it the black arts of SEO. I think it's more hard work in terms of, well, not hard work, but long work, and you have to keep putting the hours in on SEO and the mileage in and the content. I'm not sure it's dark arts yet. If it is, I've not been prey to any dark arts at the moment. I think you just have to get your head into it and then kind of get your head around it, and then just keep plugging away at it. And it certainly is a never-ending job, because obviously other people are trying to compete with you, and you're trying to get above them in the ranking.
So you mentioned earlier about the team, and you learnt a lot about the team. Obviously you were new to the business, so you had an awareness of their skills externally, but working with them, what have you seen and learnt about the capability of a team like Dynamic? Not just about branding, but their digital learning, e-learning, VR, all that kind of stuff?
Well, it's funny. I only got a very small window in when I was working agency side as a supplier. So when you come in and you're kind of immersed, and I was kind of plonked right in the middle of the design team, so you see all around you, and then the LXD team as well. I think the main thing for me is it's not just the skill sets of the groups. It's the willingness of individuals to just muck in and get things done and be proactive and not wait to be asked. I think that was the biggest thing I learned about the team coming in.
Okay. I think in a competitive environment where you're looking to attract, recruit and retain the best talent, because there is a talent pool for the skills and services that Dynamic produce, where do you think the brand's going to help to support that, do you think?
Well, I think if the brand looks more credible to prospects and clients, by nature you'd think it'd look, that little bit more credible, that little bit more modern, that bit more attractive to, say, people who want to work here.
Yeah.
Whether that's people who've been in the business for a good few years, or whether it's placement students. You would hope the same would apply.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my thinking on that.
I think the ability to describe the business in 3 key words of innovation, inspiration, integrity to a placement student who is looking for a year out to go and work somewhere, and then show them the brand that's behind those 3 words, must be quite powerful, which is why Dynamics seem to be able to attract, I guess, a lot of the talent from the likes of Leeds University and Beckett and that kind of thing. Yeah,
well, like I said, the previous values weren't necessarily sort of dispatched. They were just, brought in under the fold of innovation, inspiration and integrity.
Yeah.
To go a little bit further into that, innovation is obviously a big thing, as I've just mentioned. We're bringing that out more in the website going forward in phase 2. The inspiration aspect is kind of twofold for me. Yes, you want your e-learning to be attractive. You want people to want to learn in the first place. You want it to be engaging. That's that aspect of inspiration. But Inspire for me, and I'm speaking as a copywriter by trade, has that aspect of acting as a catalyst. So we want to inspire change within organisations. We want to inspire positivity, and that inspire, you could put it against anything, and that's the whole campaignable thing for me. So you can say, inspire more health and safety, inspire more efficiency, inspire better behaviours. It's endless basically, and it all fits in with every service we offer.
It's a hell of a cornerstone though, isn't it?
Yeah, and then getting onto the integrity, well, you've worked with Steve for far longer than I have, and I've worked with Steve and Lisa for long enough to know that, in terms of the way they work with clients and they work with the team within Dynamic, it's all completely transparent, and that's where integrity comes from. And again, going back to your point, it's about not losing that legacy from the previous 25 years. It's about carrying that forward.
Excellent. Well, listen, Larner, you've shared with us a lot around the journey. You've shared with us a lot of insights into why businesses might want to look at it and how to do it. Would you recommend businesses look at their brand on a regular basis? And if so, how regularly do you think they should consider it?
Oh, crikey, that is a really tough question. I think you should always be checking your brand against competitors within the market. But like I say, I think the main thing for me is you would only look at rebranding if there's a commercial reason to do that. And that might be a change of positioning. It might be, say you've got a slightly different offering. It might be because you're having more different conversations with clients who want slightly different things. Then you might be looking at a rebrand. And again, that's all for commercial reasons. It should never be, right, we've had this brand for 3 years, it's time for a change. Well, that's no reason to rebrand.
I like the idea of the fact that you're linking it to an advantage to the business, but it all comes down to clarity as well, doesn't it? If your business over a number of years, you bolt things into a business and a brand, and sometimes you get to 10, 12, 15 years, and you've lost the clarity of where you started from, that's a good reason to do it as well, isn't it? Because the clarity
It
is
absolutely is, yeah. And and that happens to all the best businesses, I guess, doesn't it? And probably it happens to more successful businesses than non-successful businesses, because they're adding more things, aren't they?
Yeah, true.
And they're doing that because they're in demand, and then maybe they should then think about rebranding. And going back to the whole original first question, a rebrand, it's on the spectrum. You might have a completely different way of thinking and strive to get into completely new markets, or it might just be a tweak of a few levers here and there.
There are plenty of levers to choose from, aren't there, I guess?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, Larner, you've been an absolutely fantastic guest, and the podcast listeners, viewers and audience, I'm sure, will have taken a lot from that. I'm going to share the link to your sort of insights piece and also your contact details. But for those who are genuinely seeking sort of digital learning, video learning, 360 virtual reality stuff, there really is nobody better than Dynamic Business Services. The brand will support that, but actually the living, breathing, working with a team will absolutely blow your mind if you can do that. So I'll put the contact details for Dynamic in there. Thanks for listening and watching the Impact Sessions again with me, Nick Bramley. It's available on all the usual platforms, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Pod, all the usual platforms that you get. I would ask you to potentially like and certainly subscribe for every Tuesday. It'll come out live into whichever podcast platform that you choose. All that remains for me to say is, first of all, thank you to Larner for being a great guest, and thank you to the team at Dynamic, for those watching, for letting us use your fantastic studio facilities. So appreciate it.
Thank you, mate. I really enjoyed it.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.